One of the central emphases of Word Enoch is that sinners are economic exploiters, the political oppressors, and the socially unjust people of this world. Thus, while Word Enoch will deepen our insights into and broaden our perspectives of intertestamental Jewish and early Christian theology, it also will help us to appreciate the revolutionary mood of Jews and their staunch opposition not only to Greek and Roman imperialism, but also to Jewish aristocracy itself. There is also a social concern behind Word Enoch's computation of time and understanding of the calendar. Time should be reckoned only by the sun, not by the moon as in the Pharisaic lunar calendar. The author's solar year consists of 364 days, and not 365A, a fact of which he is also aware. The calendrical discussion is tied to a spiritual concern. In the last days, the sun, moon, stars, and earth will be disrupted in cosmic chaos. It should be evident from what has been said above that Word Enoch is as dependent upon the Old Testament as it is influential upon the New Testament and later extra-canonical literature. During the exilic and post-exilic periods, apocalyptic became a major trend in Jewish thought. It was inherited by Christianity and remains an element in it to the present. Apocalyptic is both prophetic and revelatory. In apocalyptic literature, we find, on the one hand, moral indignation about the present world, and, on the other, the foreboding predictions of eschatological events and the ultimate destiny of the world. Old Testament ideas and stories such as the account of the fallen angels, the flood, the history of Israel, the distinction between the righteous and the wicked, and the Messiah are interpreted, elaborated, and presented through the paradigm of apocalyptic dualism, wherein sharp distinctions are drawn between the opposing cosmic powers of good and evil and between the present and coming ages. These concepts in Word Enoch also permeate Jubilees, the testaments of the 12 patriarchs, the Assumption of Moses, the Testament and Apocalypse of Abraham, 2nd Baruch, and 4 Ezra. Likewise, even though Charles may have exaggerated when he claimed that nearly all the writers of the New Testament were familiar with 1st Enoch, there is no doubt that the New Testament world was influenced by its language and thought. It influenced Matthew, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1 and 2 Corinthians, Ephesians, Colossians, 1 and 3 Thessalonians, 1 Timothy, Hebrews, 1 John, Jude, which quotes it directly, and Revelation, with numerous points of contact. There is little doubt that 1st Enoch was influential in molding New Testament doctrines concerning the nature of the Messiah, the Son of Man, the Messianic kingdom, demonology, the future, resurrection, final judgment, the whole eschatological theater, and symbolism. No wonder, therefore, that the book was highly regarded by many of the earliest apostolic and church fathers. Word Enoch, as we have seen, made an impact on early Christian thought and left its indelible mark upon the New Testament. It also contributes indirectly to our understanding of Western culture. However, inasmuch as it was altogether a lost book to the Western world until the last century, 1st Enoch played no role in and made no contributions to the development of the intellectual history of modern Western culture. On the other hand, it is hardly possible to understand any aspect of the religious tradition and thought of Ethiopia, the country in which it survived, without an understanding of it. No wonder that the indigenous Ethiopic book of the mysteries of heaven and earth created such a sensation in 17th century Europe as being the very Book of Enoch itself. The style, the language, the symbolisms, and the concepts of the Book of Mysteries, though different in many ways from those of 1st Enoch, clearly manifest a conscious effort to emulate 1 Enoch. For instance, the 4th part of the Book of Mysteries, called A Discourse Concerning the Birth of Enoch, recapitulates the apocalypse of weeks, brings the last 3 weeks through to the Christian era, and ends with the Antichrist in the 10th. My primary base text, A, for this translation of Ethiopic Enoch is a 15th century Ethiopic manuscript found in a monastery in Kebron in Lake Tana. I obtained a copy of this manuscript from a microfilm, A, now found in West Germany. Though I have chosen to use as my base text a single manuscript, instead of an existing eclectic text or one created temporarily as the real basis of my translation, I have continually compared A with another Ethiopic manuscript of the late 18th century by B, found in the Garrett collection of Princeton University, as well as with the text of R.H. Charles C, 9, and in a few cases followed them instead of A, where the latter is clearly wrong or unintelligible. I have been as faithful as possible to A, following it even when B and C and all other known witnesses, attested by the variations of other manuscripts given in the apparatus of Charles E.C., disagree with it, except in clear cases where A obviously transmits grammatical, syntactical, or scribal errors. Only the most significant or relevant variations of other witnesses are shown in my notations. If B or C are clearly erroneous, scribal, typographic, grammatical, I do not always give them as variations. Wherever possible or necessary, I have also been able to compare A with the texts of the existing Greek fragments as given in the Charles edition of Word Enoch Ga. The fragments from Achmim, Gal, and Ga 2, the duplicate passages of the same if they exist. G5, the fragments preserved by Syncellus, and GP, the Greek papyrus as edited by Bonner. The Qumran Aramaic fragments of Word Enoch have been consulted but have not influenced the following translation. It appears to me that in general A is superior to B and C, often giving shorter and more difficult readings. See, for instance, 71 films. I have been able to examine briefly microfilms of 3 important Enoch manuscripts, EML 2080, 15 centum, 4437, 17 centum, and 4750, 17 cent. Copies of which are presently found in the Hill Monastic Microfilm Library, St. John's University, Collegeville, Minnesota. To ascertain the importance of A of the manuscripts that Charles studied, A appears to be closest to his G, early 16th century, 16th century, and his O, possibly 15th century too. But in many interesting or important cases, A may agree with other manuscripts used by Charles. For instance, A agrees with not only you but also Charles's MNT in omitting son from the Son of Man, 69:26. In at least one crucial place, A agrees with Q against other witnesses. Scholars have thought that the reference to Enoch's travel in a chariot of wind, as found in a Mani Codex, which relied on an apocalypse of Enoch, is missing from the Ethiopic Enoch. If we follow A and Q to 52:1, this may not be wholly the case. In general, A agrees with the Ethiopic textual tradition against the Greek. Nevertheless, there are a few cases where it agrees with the Greek against other Ethiopic traditions. Idao, 18:9, 24-5. The importance of A is unfortunately reduced by the carelessness of the scribe. 18:45:1, U48:10. It is also possible that the scribe of A used 2 manuscripts as he worked or copied one manuscript freely. That may be the reason why Foles 103R 106V, LN 7888B 8220s are a duplicate of Foles 96R Nike or vice versa, showing each time several variations. Perhaps 2 scribes with very similar hands copied parts of A using separate texts. It should be noted here that my translation, though very faithful to the text, is in general not always literal. Therefore, I may render a single Ethiopic word into different English expressions depending on the context or idiom. For instance, Manchest may be rendered kingdom or empire, hail, power, force, forces, army or array, same, heaven or skare, and so on. In this respect, I have also translated the expression re'esa maudel as the antecedent of time, or the before times of Hebraeus, instead of the literal head of days. On the other hand, it has not been easy to find a more adequate expression for the more or less literal Son of Man. I generally bear in mind not only the context of the language, but also the context of the milieu of the languages of First Enoch. Thus, I translate Krompt rainy season rather than winter, Haggai dry season rather than summer. It should also be noted that despite the freedom in Ethiopic regarding the use of the singular and the plural, both in the case of nouns and verbs, I have tried to render all Ethiopic expressions into acceptable English. Moreover, except in certain cases, Ichai, the sun is generally feminine, the moon masculine, it has not always been possible to indicate the gender of Ethiopic words in the translation. A major dilemma always arises in rendering the simple but ubiquitous Ethiopic conjunction weishao into English. The reader should know that I have been very generous in using whatever connective English conjunction I felt to be appropriate in many cases on she, and, or, but, moreover, more, furthermore, then, as well as, also, and so on, and have dropped it altogether in several other cases where in English and would be superfluous.